The Sicha we're going to learn today is Chelik Tesvav, Parshas Vayechi, the first Sicha. It is a pretty long Sicha, but the Teichen is a very interesting Sicha. Never start the Sicha, we bring in the Posik, Vayechi Yaakov Veretz Mitzrayim Shvayis Rishona. Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. Vayehi Yemei Yaakov, and the days of Yaakov, the Posik continues, was 147 years. That's what the Posik tells us. Fragments of the Meforshim ask, Baal Shel Derachayim, why does the Torah left in Mitzrayim? Why does the Torah have to specify clearly the amount of years he lived in Mitzrayim? The Baal Shel in the Friedrich said it says in the previous Sedre, Askum dik in Mitzrayim is given Yemei Shnei Megurai Shleishim Mashana, that when he came in Mitzrayim, he said, I'm 130 years old. And in them Posik the Torah, and in the same Posik the Torah says, Vayehi Yemei Yaakov Shnei Chayav Sheva Shani Barboim Mashana, that the whole life of Yaakov was 147 years. From that we understand, as in Mitzrayim, I take a left, in Mitzrayim, I lived 17 years. What's the purpose? Why is it important to mention the 17 years of Mitzrayim specifically? Since we know from before he was 130 when he came to Mitzrayim, and the Pasuk says that he was 147 when he passed away. So obviously we know he lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. Why does the Torah have to specifically write that he lived in Mitzrayim for 17 years? On the other hand, if for some reason the Torah feels it wants to mention specifically the amount of years of the Mitzrayim, then we have an opposite question. Before I read it inside, I want to say what the question is. Then you didn't have to say how old he was when he passed away. This comes behemshach to the previous Sedre, where it says he lived for 130, he was 130 years old. And now the Torah is going to add that he lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. If the Torah wants to specifically write how many years he lived in Mitzrayim, so it's extra to give the sum total. The Torah would say that he lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. That would be enough. Because we know before that he was 130 when he came. Another 17 he lived in Mitzrayim. So we know that he was 147 when he passed away. The cheshbon is clear for sich allein. The cheshbon is clear. The counting is clear on its own. But answer him a Meforshim, so the Meforshim answer like this. At the far told the Torah is the Tzol Yordan Vashankiv Gevent in Mitzrayim. The reason why the Torah specifies the amount of years that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim is to zog the Roi Vayechi, and it says the word Vayechi, he lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. Now the Kuf Lamet Shona bis demel seine bei Yaakov and Given gerechten the Yordan von Leben. Because the years before that, before he got to Mitzrayim, the 130 years is not counted years of life, living. And the time is, the reason is, while Royim Hoyu Yemei Shnei Chayai, as Yaakov told Pare when he visited Pare, bad for the days of my life, full mit omel vanocha, full of hardships and sighing and trouble. Free as I'm not life from Esau. First, the time he had to run away from Esau. Then sein Gefinnis by Lovanon. Then when he was by Lovon, was by Yemach Chalani Cheder V'Kera Ba'Loilot. He said that the day it was hot, cold at night, but I didn't sleep at night, all kinds of problems. And as they write there and further, then when Yosef was sold. So all these years were years of hardship. You can't really call it he really lived a proper life. But they can sort of when he came to Mitzrayim, he didn't suffer any problems. And he lived there, life of peace and calmness. Living in the best of the land. Seeing that all his children are complete. Yosef he saw him as a Mishnah Melech, and he's still complete. The father is then was Vayechi. So this answers one part of the question. Why does the Torah specifically want to specify the years that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim? To tell us Vayechi Yaakov Beretz Mitzrayim Shvayis Rishona, that the 17 years of Mitzrayim, those were alive. So the Torah wanted to tell us special about these 17 years that they were the real life, not like other years. But then the question comes up. So okay, so the Torah should have said that he lived 17 years in Mitzrayim, and not say that he was 147 when he passed away, because that we know ourselves, since he was 130 when he came, and the Torah will tell us he lived 17 years in Mitzrayim, we know he was 147. So then he continues. Before I say like this, when the Torah is Kelel alles eine Jordan zusammen im Mesach Hakuf und the Kuf Mem Zayin Shana. In addition, the Torah counts the 70 years of Mitzrayim to tell us that was his real life. Then the Torah also puts all the 147 years together. But it's undeutlich, to show with this, die letzte 17 Jahre, die Weichiorn gemacht, vergessen dem Zaren des Nefesh und alle friedlich Jahren sein. The last 17 years made him forget the suffering that he had all the previous years. These, sie haben alle ausgesehen wie gute Jahren. This made them all look like good years. Kul and Shav and Lateva, they're all equal to Lateva. As Rashi says many places, that when you say all the years together, it shows that they're all good. So that's what that's why the Pasuk does both. Pasuk wants to specify the 70 years of Mitzrayim to tell you that was Vayechi Yaakov. That's his real life. And Torah also puts all the years together, 147 when he passed away, to put them all in one unit. That because he had these 17 good years, that made that all the years from before that were not good living years, which means they're full of tzad, they are all good because it made him forget the previous tzad that he had. And now as if his whole life was good. That answers the kashas. I said, it's still not simple. Emestak, as we bald die letzte Jahren seinen gewend beteva. Haben sie Yankiv azay vergittigt. True, that because the last 17 years were good, so they appeased Yaakov, they compensated Yaakov. Bis zu machen and vergessen die Sohne von alle friedliche Jahren, so much so that he forgot the pain, the suffering that they had in the previous years. That's only the Rabbi Yankov's feeling. He can aber meisiv sein asach hakel. How can we make them all together? The Torah adds a complete sum total, was his bavust, a total that we know already. Nevertheless, the Torah went out of its way to tell us the total. Men need to sein as kol and shovin, for the purpose of saying that they're all equal. When even though Yaakov forgot, as far as the years are concerned, they were not equal. Just Yaakov's last 70 years, he felt that he was compensated for the years before. But Nochmer, not only we tell you that they're all the same, Kul and Shav and Lateva, they're all good the same. Bishas, 130 years, eine given mat v'roim hebech. 130 years, which is the main majority of his year, were small, not counted as a real life, and bad, the opposite of good. And the 17 years, and the 17 years were good. So can we say that at 70 years, all the other 130 years were really good because of the last 17 years? In other words, Rabbi Yaakov, you could say it. But when the Torah puts it in a special X-ray, which the Torah didn't have to do it. And the Torah puts it, can you say that it's to show that they're all good, but at 70 years are good? There must be something more here. That one, das verstehen, the rabbis will understand it. Deeper in Medrash, first to explain the words of the Medrash on Pirush Rashi and what Rashi says in only from just said in the beginning of Parshas Vayechi. The Medrash says like this: Lama Parshas ustuma mikol Parshas shel Torah. Why is this Parsha stuffed up, so to speak, more than the other Parshas of the Torah? Which means like this: between every Sedra, there's an extra space between the end, the last word, the last letter of a Sedra, and the beginning of the next Sedra. There's a space of quite a few letters. Between the end of Vayigash and the end of Vayechi, there's nothing special. It's not the same way as if there's the same space between one word and another. That's all, not more than that. So the Medrash asks, why is this Parsha stuma? Stuma is stuffed up. There's no opening there. Elo, the answer is, Medrash says like this. 3 answers. Number 1, Kivin Shenifter Avinu Yaakov is Chilo Shibud Mitzrayim al Yisrael. That from when Yaakov, our father Yaakov, passed away, the Shibud, the hardships of Mitzrayim, of the Egyptian that Eden started. That's why it means stuffed up. It stuffed up the Eden. And since Yaakov passed away, that's when the Shibud started. So by the end, when it talks about in the Sedre about the passing of Yaakov, it's stuma. That's one teretz. Another pshat. Loma stuma. Why is it stuffed up? Why is it closed up? Yaakov Avinu tried to reveal the end of times when Mashiach will come, and it got stuffed up from him. It got forgotten from him. And another pshat. Loma stuma. Why is it closed up? Because when he was in Mitzrayim, all the tzaras he had in the world were stuffed up, were taken away. Here there were no tzaras whatsoever. All the tzaras were taken away. And the Rebbe explains what this means. The Kasha Loma Parshas Ustuma made the Parshas. When the Medrash asks, why is this Parshas closed up? It means very simple. In simple pshat, there's no space before the words Vayechi Yaakov is the beginning of the Parsha. The Balda said, it's a new Sedra, so there should be a space. So the question is, why is there no space? Is verstandig, as Dovi by alle andere Seders from the Torah, So it's self-understood that just like all other seders, that here too, there should have been a space in between. So the Medrash asks, why is there no space? And then the Medrash gives three answers. Al-Pia now is in them verstanden. But based on what we said before, it's not understood. What's not understood? The stima, the fact that before the words Vayechi Yaakov, it's closed up, there's no space. First and foremost, it's supposed to hint to some closing for good. But since the Parsha is going to start with Vayechi Yaakov, Yaakov was living, and he lived good years, and there is a stima right before that. So B'Pashta is that stima, that closing up, must be some hint for something good that happened through Yaakov. The Hainu, dos was demot is Sosam Emenu called Tzorah Shebeil. The third teretz that the Medrash says that this means it stuffed up all the tzorahs. That will be the simplest pshat. Why before Vayechi Yaakov there is no space, it's closed up. So the question is, why isn't that the first teretz? Noch starker is the shaila. The shaila is stronger. So far the shaila is the first teretz should have been that they stuffed up all the tzorahs, because it says Vayechi Yaakov, and there's a stima before that, something that has to do with Yaakov's life. And that is the third teretz, that Yaakov's life became completely without tzorahs. But the kasha is even stronger. Before this space, which is supposed to be empty and it's not, which is the end of Parshas Vayigash, the scene from Parshas Vayigash, that sailed wegen them guten Matzav Achayim from Bnei Yisrael Nerizgation. What are the last words in the end of Parshas Vayigash about the good life the Yidden had in Goshen? As he given in a nation from Yifru Vayirbu Me'ed, that was in the way that they multiplied a lot. So like this, the end of Vayigash talks about the good. If so, and since right after that pasuk that talks about the good that happened to the Yidden, there is no separation, there's no hefsek. And right away comes Vayechi Yaakov Beretz Mitzrayim, he lived in Beretz Mitzrayim. The Svara Mechayev. So the Svara tells you, and with their steamer made the Torah to Matgish that by closing it up, Torah wants to stress as Vayechi Yaakov kum bismichos on kein hefsek in sein Teichen HaTeif mit Nisiyim from the Friedrich Parsha. When we say there is no separation, that means that Vayechi Yaakov comes mamish in one hemshech to what I said before. What I said before is how good the Yidden lived. And then it says Vayechi Yaakov without any separation must be that this is a hemshech to what the good things that happened, as the Torah says in the end of Vayigash. If avos kum the time for Sosam Amenu called Tzorah Shebeil mi Medrash als letzter from the time. So why is this pshat that the reason it's closed up to tell you that when Yaakov was in Mitzrayim all his tzorahs were closed up? That's the last pshat. And the erste, the first ones, that says ikedike, which automatically it means that they are more important, special, better truths, are time im eich, and which are the other reasons and the closeness why the parsha is closed. Those are negative things. One thing is that they started having shibud Mitzrayim. The other thing is that Yaakov forgot the cats. These are negative things. So it comes out like this. The Posik tells us in the end of Vayigash things were good for Yaakov, for Yidden B'chal. Then the Posik after that, beginning of Vayechi, says also how Yaakov's life was a Mitzrayim good life. And in the middle, there's a close. It's closed. Why? To tell you something negative. How does that make sense? The first thing should be the closeness should be that tells you a hemshech. And the other truthim should maybe also be truthim. But why is not the first teretz the good one, that this shows that by Yaakov, all his tzorahs were taken away? This is a kasha, the way the Medrash puts it, why the Medrash brings that teretz as the third, the last one. A better kasha is Arasha. Since Rashi usually explains the simple pshat. Was Victus an Indian tape in Siches zu Vayifru, Gamer und zu Vayechi Yaakov und zu Chai Yaakov. So certainly in Pshat, it would make sense that the steamer, the fact that it's closed up there, is because it wants to connect the end of Parshas Vayigash, which is a good of Yidden, and the beginning of Vayechi Yaakov, which is again good. So what would be the simple Pshat in Pshuta Shel Mikra? Why in between the two good things there's a steamer? To show you there is a great connection between the two because it's something good. Canal, like we said before, it's connected to the life of Yaakov. It was good in Goshen and straight right away without any separation. It goes straight to the good of Yaakov. But why would we say that the reason why the steam is there because of something negative? Was is verursacht geworden durch sein Ptire. Something that happened because he passed away, that things happened. In Pshat, that wouldn't be the simple Pshat. The simple Pshat would be that the reason it's closed up to show that this something represents something good. So he's need to move and he says, not understood. What's the kasha? On the Rasha, number one, Dafke dem dritten tam, in Meder, Shesosim and the Kol Tzores, Chulu, Dafke this Pshat, the third Pshat, that all the Tzores were taken away, stuffed up, bring the Rasha. Rasha doesn't even bring that teretz at all. Rasha also explains why there is no space in between. But he doesn't bring that teretz at all. Not only, see, Medrash, the kasha is, why is it the third? It should be the first. In Rasha, the kasha, why doesn't he bring it b'chlal? That's number one. Second thing is, it's very time for Medrash, what Rasha brings here. The two reasons that Rasha does bring, but there's a lechure gedacht stellen, I forget and say that they should have brought them in an opposite order. Like in zweiten Tam is this Stimme verbunden mit Chaya Yaakov. The second one is connected to Chaya Yaakov. That while Yaakov was alive, he wanted to tell the sons, the cats, and he forgot it, or whatever the pshat is, that he couldn't do it. That still has to do with Yaakov's life. Agama, the Sibitz Yaakov's Rotzim Megalva in the cats is given us what he's given so much of, even though the reason he wanted to tell them the cats is because it was close to his passing. So it's connected to his passing. He's over 40, but nevertheless, it was when he was alive. So this teretz, the second reason, still is at a time when Yaakov was alive. But the first reason, the first reason is that when Yaakov passed away, the Shibud Mitzrayim started. So that's something that has to do later, after the life of Yaakov, after he passed away. The Frat Azev, the Inyan Leitev, is do noch mehr hard. So first of all, it comes first. That's what happened. The second thing came first, that Yaakov wanted to tell the cats. So that should have been first. And then should be something that happened later when he passed away. Besides that, in the first one, it's stronger. The first one is a bigger tzad than even at the Shibud. The second one is not such a big tzad. And as we said before, really, this should not refer to a tzad. It should be a good thing. So at least he would say the second that is first, which is not such a bad thing. But Rasha, what he does is he tells first the worst thing, then he tells some not so bad, and the third thing, which is the best, which should be the simple pshat. Rasha doesn't say it all. So the Rebbe says to explain this, let's bring in the Meforshim, something the Meforshim say concerning the two reasons of Rasha. And this is what they say. If we're going to say, like Rasha says that, why is there a steamer in the Parsha? Because when Yaakov passed away, then there was a steamer, they stuffed up the eyes of Eden from Tzores. The Shibud Mitzrayim started. Or if he want the other shot that he wanted to tell them the cats, and it got stuff taken away from him. If the steamer, the fact that there's a space no space, no separation, is because of one of these two reasons, or both reasons. Why is it here? Why is it put in the beginning of Vayechi? It should have been later, when it talks about Yaakov passing away, because both terutzim have to do with his passing. The second one that he wanted to tell the cats and he forgot is because before he passed away, he wanted to do it, so it's close to his passing. The one that the Shibud started after he passed away is mamish after he passed away. This is not where the Torah puts it. The Torah puts it by Vayechi Yaakov, where it says that he lived in Mitzrayim. It doesn't speak about his passing. So why is the steamer, which represents these two things, written here between Vayikash and the beginning of Vayechi, and not later when it talks about the Ptira of Yaakov? That's the kasha of Meforshim. If I answer as a steamer, you meet the seder is meet kentik. That kegni not the seder. It would be in the middle of a seder. It wouldn't be. You couldn't tell. In the middle of a seder, sometimes there's less, and the bigger separation, small separation, you wouldn't be such a big deal, and you wouldn't be able to tell. But in the beginning of a parsha, that's a fuzz. Then it makes it very clear. And he explains the shas steamer is in on the seder. When this steamer is in the beginning of a seder, was mit anaya seder hebt sich on a besondere inyan. We know that every time there's a new seder, is beemes a new inyan. Darf doch sein a hefsek revach mer So obviously, that's where you need the separation, because every seder is a meaning for itself. So every seder before the seder needs a separation. Parshas is the gam talking about, and when you see that there is no separation, no space at all, it's closed. Und in Yonim stehen doch in zwei besondere sedres, and the Yonim that it talks about are in two separate sedres, because after all, Vayigash is a seder for itself, Vayechi is a seder for itself. So it should have been a real separation. And if it's not there, is mistaber leimer, probably it means to say, a die Stimme weiß nicht auf Stimme von protestliche Psukim, Werte, wo die Stimme gefindt sich. Obviously, what it's trying to tell you, that this, whatever the Stimme is trying to tell you, whatever this being closed comes to tell you, is not negated to these specific Psukim. But nor is verbunden mit Klolos Teichen HaSeder. It has to do with the Seder as a whole. The Farberts in Nirmes, but to Ragdome, to the Minyan HaSeder, Seder Ukedalam. In other words, sometimes if something special happens in the middle of a parsha, so it has to do with that pasuk, with something else. But if something has to do between two sedres, and we know two sedres are separate in Yonim, so obviously he's trying to tell you something, not benegay a specific pasuk. It's trying to tell you something, but negay the whole sedre this is for. And since this is the beginning of a whole sedre of Vayechi, so obviously this theme has to do with the whole sedre. It doesn't have to do with Vayechi Yaakov. It doesn't have to do with Yaakov living. It has to do with the teichen of the whole sedre. As the Rebbe will explain, what this tells you about the whole Seder. So what the Rebbe is trying to say, that when the Mefarshim say, and we quoted before, that really it should have been written, the stima should have been later. But it's here in order to be able to tell, because if it would be written in the middle of a parsha, middle of a Seder, you wouldn't be able to tell that. So the Rebbe explains it doesn't mean just not that, just some that you wouldn't be able to tell that so much that there is something different here. It tells you something special. That the difference that's happening here, and that's why there's a stima, has to do with the whole sedre. That's why it's done before a sedre. So now let's see, what is the sedre Vayechi talking about? Not the last these psukim, the whole sedre. And when we figure out what the whole sedre is talking about, we'll see what the stima is trying to tell us, and we'll answer the kashas. Und the Yesa, the Iker Teichen for the sedre Vayechi, is wegen Meirois, was einen nicht bescheichert zu nach Chaim von Yankel bin Eretz Mitzrayim. Since the whole Teichen of the sedre, the whole sedre, is not really concerning the life of Yaakov, how he lived in Mitzrayim. Das wird erzählt in Parshas Vayigash. This is in Parshas Vayigash told. As Yaakov bewonnen seine Gemeinde Tavoret, we see him Vayifra Vayivra. It says they were the best of the land, and they multiplied their all the life of Shvatim and Yaakov in Mitzrayim is told in Vayigash. Here in Vayechi, what's the main point of the whole Seder of Vayechi? Rabbi Meirois was eine Bekesher zu sein Ptire. Happenings that are connected to his passing. This was ein Ptire Bepiltir when he actually passed away, which is written in the Parsha. And the Rebbe says, where do we see it in the Parsha? Everything is connected to it. First of all, in the beginning of the Seder, it says, Vayikra v'yimei Yisrael lomos. In Onfang Parsha, beginning it says that the days got close to his death. Und der Hemshech in Yonim wegen Yaakov v'vin his bracha to Yosef bevono. Then it says, Yaakov gave a bracha to Yosef and his children. Und der Nachher bracha lebonu, and he gave a bracha just to his children. These are all in Yonim as einen Shayach zum Zman shekedem aptira. These are all things that have to do because it was close to and before he died. So even the beginning of the Parsha, before he died, it's all in Yonim in connection to his ptira. The Fratas betchilas Seder Mamesh, especially in the beginning of the Seder, in the ersten Pasuk, the first Pasuk, that gebracht the Sachakel from Kol Shnei Chai Yaakov. The first Pasuk says how old he was in the end of his life. So the first Pasuk talks Mamesh about the end of his life. So this is the Teichen of the Seder, is the Fun Verstanden, for that we understand, as with the Parshas Tumah. The fact that the Torah writes a Parshas Tumah doesn't have that space in between, in the beginning of the Seder. And we said before that means that it has to do with something of the whole Seder, not of the words Vayechi Yaakov, but the whole Seder. Main the Torah, on that the Torah means to stress, if astime bekesher to the Teichen quoted in the Parsha of Tiras Yaakov. The Torah is trying to tell you something concerning the passing of Yaakov. So the stima that's there in the beginning has to do something with the Parsha, with the Sedre, and this whole Sedre is the Ptira of Yankov. Okay. The mitven farent for beide even the Montekashas. This will answer both questions asked in the beginning. But Rasha is mashmit in dritten time. First of all, why Rasha skips Bechal, the third reason, that why the Torah has a stima is to tell you that he was finished with all the tzoras, and the Seder from the Tzvei gebracht time. And the second question, why does Rasha bring the order of the other time in the order of first? He brings that The Tzoros, but they even started when Yaakov died, and the second one, he forgot the kids. Now we'll understand why. The Baldi's theme is verbunden with Ptiras Yaakov, since we just finished saying that this theme has to do with the Sedre as a whole, which is the Ptira of Yaakov, with the Pasim, again, the Siches with the Ptira, and all the things that happen in connection to the Ptira. But the mail in Pshuta Shel Mikra cannot need. So a simple pshat, there's no place to say, Adistime from the Sedre was set with Ptiras Yaakov, so Reime sein of Shosem Liebe Kol Tzoros. So it doesn't make sense to say, when we're talking, the Torah wants to teach something has to do with his passing, that should mean to tell us that all the tzoros went away from him. Why? Science man. First of all, in time, this that all the tzoros went away is given Balbam Kuman in Mitzrayim. That happened right away when he came to Mitzrayim. Zibitz in your father Ptira. 17 years before he passed away. So the Torah is trying to tell us something about his Ptira and the connection to his Ptira. Why would the Torah hint to something that started 17 years earlier? That's because this man, sign the contents, the Inyan from Shasosim and the Kol Tzoros on this idea that all the Tzoros was taken away from him, were closed up from him, was his Tachlis Achayas, that shows how the life was special, is in Kegenzat to Minyan of Yaakov. That's in contradiction to Yaakov's death. The fact that we're saying he lived the very, very good life, that he had no Tzoros, that has to do with his life. And if the Torah is talking about the Ptira and the stima is there to give you to tell you something about his Ptira, it wouldn't be telling you something about how good his life was. Because it's the beginning of the Parsha, you get it to the whole Seder, the whole Parsha. So it can't be that it's telling you something about his life. Simon at the time, because this was started 17 years before, and Simon had Teichen. It doesn't fit that when we want to tell you something about his Ptira, we tell you how good he lived. That's why Rashi skips that reason, because in Pshuta Shel Mikra that reason doesn't fit. Now there's also no question why the fact that he wanted to reveal the cats and in Sosaman it got stuffed from him, it got taken away from him. Rashi writes as a second reason, weil in Siches is their Tam Shenifte Nante zu Pshuta Shel Mikra. Because the first reason that he gives, that when Yaakov Avinu passed away, the Tzoros, but he even started, is closer to the Pshat. Since we're talking about the Ptira of Yaakov, so that's closer to the Ptira. See, the fact, the Balda, the Ptira Gufi given the Sivit to the Stimet, Mashen Kibel Speaking Galas. See, why did the Tzoros start? Because Yaakov passed away. So that has a connection to the Ptira. So the Torah wants to tell you something about the Ptira, so it makes sense that the Torah is telling you that the Ptira brought a Stimet, brought that the Sosam, the Shibut happened, the Stimet, the stuffness, the Verstoppkeit happened already. While the other reason that he wanted to tell him the Ketzer and he didn't make it, that is not part of the Ptira. That it didn't come because of the Ptira. The reason he wanted to tell him was because he was going to pass away. But the fact that he forgot it, which is the hint of the fact that there's a stime in the Psukim, in the Sefer Torah, that is in the gay that he forgot the cats. Forgetting the cats is not a cause because of the Ptira. So it's in time of the Ptira, but it's not connected directly to the Ptira. So which one is more Pshuta Shel Mikra that's connected to the Ptira? The Tzoros, when they even started, because of his Ptira. So the Torah wants to tell us something about the Ptira. The Torah means to say that the Ptira caused the Shibut. The second thing is also close to the Ptira. So Rashi also brings it, but that's not as close to Pshuta Shel Mikra as the first shot. While the third shot in the Medrash doesn't fit here at all, because that has nothing to do with the Ptira. It has to do the opposite. It has to do with his living in Mitzrayim 17 years good. So everything seems to be answered. Es bleibt aber noch nicht verstanden, die Bepnimis Inyan. You go, Bepnimis al Siches, it's not so simple anyway. Parvos hebt sich Taki on the Seder mit Vayechi Yaakov. Why does Taki the Seder start with Yaakov lived? Weil the ganze Seder hat sich wegen der Ptira von Yaakov. Und die passieren gehen in Siches mit dir. The whole Seder is talking about Yaakov's death, Yaakov's passing, and all the things in connection to his passing. So why does Taki this Seder start with Vayechi Yaakov? True that when the Torah wants to tell us how many years he lived, when do you say that? When we talk about his Ptira. So then we tell you how old was he when he was passing away. So L'chura, maybe that's why the Parsha, the Seder that talks about the Ptira, starts with Vayechi Yaakov. The Rebbe says no. Der Mirkwert replace Rech the Siches von zweiten halben Post. The second half of the Pasuk fits. Pasuk says, "Vayechi Yaakov." The days of Yaakov were 147. That Taka fits. When we talk about the Ptira, you tell her he was 147 years old when he passed away. But the first half of the Pasuk, Vayechi Yaakov beretz Mitzrayim 17 shana, that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. Was Fred erzählt wegen Yaakov's beste Jahren, where it talks about the best years of his life. What's the connection to that with the death of Yaakov, with the Ptira of Yaakov? And since we said the whole parsha is the Ptira, so the words Vayechi Yaakov don't belong here. Differently. That according to this, that the whole Seder is talking about the Ptira. The way the Seders are divided should have been differently. Should have been like this. Vayechi Yaakov beretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. Das hat gedacht sein der Sieg from Parshas Vayechi. This posik, not the first part of the posik, that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim 17 years, which means he lived good years in Mitzrayim, that should have been part of the end of Vayechi. That should be the end of Vayechi. Was where it sailed by Chiruch Yankiv. In Vayechi it talks about Yaakov was revived and he became happy and he met Yosef. Vayechi Yisrael, and says that the Yidden lived in Goshen, the good land, by Yifra, by Yirbu Meid, and they multiplied. Vayechi Yaakov, and then so that should be, so that's Vayechi. So in the end of Vayechi, it should have said, Vayechi Yaakov beretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. When it talks about how good it was in Mitzrayim and how they lived in Mitzrayim, that's what Vayechi Yaakov believes. Now the second half, Vayechi Yaakov lived for 147 years, that should be the beginning. Yes, from Parshas Vayechi. Vayechi Yaakov should be the beginning of Vayechi, because Vayechi talks about this Ptira. That's how it'll start. That Yaakov was by the Ptira 147 years, and then the Torah would go on. Everything had happened surrounding his Ptira. That's how it should be. That's one kasha. No, we also have to understand. The Giratchen as I said many times. So, or the name of a Seder, with the ganze Seder. The name of a Seder has a connection to the context of the whole Seder. And that's the Rebbe's Chiddush, that even though people think that the name of a Seder is based on, because it's one of the first few words of the Seder, which is connected, which is true, but it's not only that. The name, the word that is the name, tells us the whole Teichen of the Seder. And back in every Seder, we have to look into it and see how it fits. According to that, Hanvi is Yazeh Verdi Seder Ongruf with Noma Vayechi. So how is the Seder called Vayechi? And the site was the inhalt from the Seder is Ptiras Yaakov. When the whole concept, the whole meaning, the whole Teichen of the Seder is how Yaakov passed away. Heipech from the meaning of Vayechi. The opposite of Vayechi. So why? So two kashas. Why does it start with Vayechi when it talks about the Ptira? And why is the name of the Seder Vayechi, which is talking about the Ptira, when Vayechi means he lived, not that he passed away. So the Rebbe, the beer in them, the explanation is like this. Amitis Dinyan Achayim is Achayim versus Alam Ochayim. When we say something is alive, when is it really alive? If it's always alive, eternally, forever. It's forever, it exists forever, eternally, without any changes. But the fact is the emes and metzias mechayim feranor b'meivish. That's what the real chai, what's really called alive, only Hashem, which is the moker achayim, the source of all life. He is the real life. It states as a posik that says, "V'havaya lekim emes hu lekim chayim." Havaya lekim, the Eibishter is true, and the Eibishter is life, which means was emes is a zach was vet nit nifsek nishtane. Emes is something that doesn't stop. If it's really emes, it can't change, and it never changes, it never stops. Just to use a simple example, 1 and 1 equals true is true. That'll never change. And you can't say in one place it's 2, one place it's 4, or next year it'll be 2. If it's emes, it's true. Something that doesn't get stopped and doesn't change. Them is though a hefsek, that is only because if something is alive, but it stops, that's not called emes. That's called a lie, because of. But the fact gefindt, that's what you find the halacha. As Teichen was fed in 7 years. There are certain rivers that dry up once in 7 years. Werden sie angerufen, they're called in the Mishnah, Nohores HaMechazvin, rivers who lie. This is an apostle Kiddush Mechatas, when you have to use water together with the Porah Aduma, and then use it to sprinkle, it has to be, the Pasuk says, the Pasuk says it has to be live water. And these waters, even though now they're working good and they're fine, but if we know that they're going to stop eventually, it's not called Chaim. So because really Chaim is, life means if it's eternal. The Farzon Chazal is Chesome Shel HaKadosh Baruch Emes. That's what the Chazal say. The seal of Hashem is Emes. Why Emes? Because the Rebbe is going to explain Emes and Chaim go together. Life is, the Eibush is the real life, and that's the real Emes. But Emes is a name gestalt for 3 Yesis. Emes is made up of 3 letters. Aleph, which is the Esther, Os von Aleph base, first letter of the Aleph base. Mem, the mittelste Eis, the middle Eis. Tov, the letzte Eis, the last one, which means from beginning through the middle to the end, all the way. Was by a vice, as it is uncanny, it shows there's no change. It's the same from beginning to end. Like it says by David, Ani Rishon, Vani Achrein, I'm first, I'm last, and besides me, there's nothing, which means in between. David is the Metzias from beginning to end. So David is the real emes. And that means that David is the real Chaim. And those mean the Pasuk, when the Pasuk says, Hashem Elokim emes, Hu Elokim Chaim, so the Pasuk says, because the David is emes, the Baal Mahusi is Baruch is emes, since the Mahus of David is true, which means he's eternal, never stops, never changes, is Hu Elokim Chaim. That's why we say he's the one that's alive. He's at his Baruch, the emes and Metzias B'chaim, he's the real life. So the Eibishter is only the real life because the real life means that it's living forever. If it's going to stop eventually, that while it's there, it's not really alive. Potentially, it's going to stop. So it's not really a real strong Metzias. So the only one that's really alive is the Eibishter. But all the creatures, the Baldas is eine Nitken Emes Metzias Metzias. All creatures, all creation is not a real Metzias on their own. They were created at one point. And Heviv and Nifset means something that's created and wasn't there always, will eventually stop. Some things will take longer, it's not, but it'll eventually stop. So since they're not really a being that will last forever, the Mela, you can't say they're really alive. Seiden only dann, wenn der Nivre is dovuk und verbunden mit Elokus. If the Nivre, which is not really alive, is connected godliness, and godliness is Chayim, is really alive, then we could consider that Nivra also have a Siches to Chayim. High time event need non-beautiful Chayim. For that reason, even are called alive. Why? So lives in the Likkutei because they're connected to godliness. In Posuk it says, you are connected to God, your God. All of you are alive today. Even they are Nevroim, they're also there with an eternal way because they're connected to the eternal. But if they, as other emes Chaim, the bakers will kus from Aiden, soll sich onsen in Elam Hazagashmi. But in order that this dvekas, this connection that he has to David, which makes him Chaim, makes him really alive, but you can't see it. You look at the person, you don't see the eternity that's there. You don't see that he's the Etzem Metzias, that is the real life, which is eternal. In Elam Hazagashmi, this physical world, you don't see it. The world covers up, conceals the truth of Elokus. He says, Dafka durch them, so how do you reveal it? It's only through them, through this, was a gate durch the Nisyenis, Bilbulim. Person has tests, and has all kinds of turbulence, and has all kinds of challenges. Sterringen in sein Dvekus, that he has all kinds of challenges in his connection to Hashem. Und doch bleibt ganz und umgeendet in Kimatei Mitzvahs, and he's complete and not changed concerning keeping the mitzvahs. Demelt werden is gale mit der fuller Klorkeit. That's when it's very clear and becomes revealed. Sein emes Chai is the true Chayes. Sein Dvekus Belakus can it get that when you see he keeps the mitzvahs even when there are challenges, that means that his connection to Hashem can never change. Why does it? Because it's connected to Hashem, and Hashem is unchangeable, so he's also. So when do you see that the Yid really has within him the Chayim of the Eibishter, which is eternal, because he's David to the Eibishter, when there are challenges to stop it, and nevertheless he doesn't care, and he passed the test. Them is verstandig the Siches from Vayechi Yankov to the close of Sedre. From this we understand the connection between Vayechi Yankov to the whole Sedre. Sicha and Yonas Ptiras Yaakov. The main thing is about the Ptir of Yaakov, which we ask the question. So why is the Sedre start with Vayechi Yaakov? Why is it called Vayechi? Near the time was the ganze Sedre ruft sich Vayechi. Why it's called Vayechi? Now we'll understand. The Mesha de alle Friedrich Jordan, concerning all the previous years, hat man nicht gesehen, sicher, sie seine Jordan von Emes und Vayechi. All the years of Yaakov, really you couldn't see, is this a real Vayechi? From Vatem Adveikim Hashem Elokeichem Chayim. Is this a Adveikus that represents the true connection to Hashem that is the real life? Ubifrat Azad Adveikus in Chayim was his behesem to darkest Ovis in the Merkava, especially a type of life that fits to the level of the Merkava, of the Ovis, which are Merkava, which are bottled to Hashem. So all these years before, you really couldn't know for sure. Wasn't so big deal. Wasn't so revealed the fact that he's Dovik Hashem and has this eternity within him. Why? When the cloud from Al Tam in the Atzmachat this rule that the Gemara says, don't believe in yourself till the day you die. In other words, you could never know that you'll remain a tzaddik till the day you die. It's said by tzaddikim also. So as long as he's still alive and there's still another day to live, more time to live, you don't know what's going to happen. So it's not so sure that this is going to be forever. Yaakov actually, when he was afraid of Esau, he said to David, you promised me, you protect me, but maybe I sinned. So he really thought to himself, maybe he sinned. So there's, in theory, there's a possibility he might still sin. The fire is ein Darge von Dvekes v'meshe von alle Yoren eichen Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, when he was Dovek to Hashem Takeh, even the years in Eretz Yisrael, und das Durgen Azefel Tzoros in Yisurim, and he did pass many Tzoros, many problems, and many sufferings. Noch als nicht gewähnt kann genügend Beweis of seinem Vayechi. He still was not enough proof for the real Vayechi. Because who knows what's going to be later. Now, feel ich nicht das, was hat gesehen, als seine Kinder und Nebonne seine Tzadikim, even the fact that he saw his children, the grandchildren at Tzadikim, still no proof. Die Balti haben sich gefunden in Eretz Yisrael. They were in Eretz Yisrael. So there they were tzaddikim. When we can't wissen, wie sie ihr Matzef can sein in a vergräbtes land. We don't know how they're going to be in the coarse land, the bad land like Mitzrayim. You don't know. So on Yaakov, you don't know what's going to happen. As much as till then everything was fine and he overcame all challenges, his children also. But when we came to the time close to his passing, we frat as intuition is given, they're coming in Mitzrayim, especially that in between he came to Mitzrayim. Und nie bezeichnen sich als ich wenn die Nervosores ist beschleimes Achinayle in Kimatera Mitzvahs. So till it came to the point where while he was in Mitzrayim, to prove that while he's in Mitzrayim Nervosores, which is the lowest land, he's still complete in doing Torah Mitzvahs. He's the letzte Rege von sein Leben, to the last moment of his life. So when you got close to this, that's when you're going to see it. As long as there's still more time to live, you don't know what's going to happen, especially when you're in Mitzrayim. But here being in Mitzrayim, and he's already by the end of his life, and he's still the same Tachas Hashlemus. We frat noch by Zendort as Mitos Hashlemus, seeing that his children are complete. As alles in the kinders and the ganzen Siches, all his children are complete in their being tzaddikim. Und Neich Yosef nicht gucken, ich was Melech und nicht ben Goyim, despite that he was a king and he was captured amongst Goyim, he's aimed with Tzikose, he was still a tzaddik. These as Menashe and Ephraim, even Menashe and Ephraim was born in Mitzrayim, Eretz Menashe and Ephraim, which are born in Mitzrayim, in the low land of Mitzrayim. Seine royal bracha, so that they deserve to get a blessing. They're so great that all generations, even are going to want to bless their children. They'll bless them. Hashem should make Ephraim Menashe. So use them as an example to bless. So you can imagine now Yaakov saw that at this point, his children are tzaddikim, his grandchildren are great people. And this was at the end of his life. This revealed the true life of Yankov. That proved that even the previous years, is full superficially is full of suffering and nefesh. Is given by Yankov. Really, they were the real life of Yankov. The far as the last 17 years in Mitzrayim, that's why being the last 70 years made that all the previous are good. But the question was, how did they make them all good? Maybe Yaakov forgot about those bad years because these were such good years, but how did it change the years? What it means in the life, it means a different thing. It means the true life that's connected to the Eibishter. So when it came to the end, and you saw Taked till the end with all the things, he still was the tzaddik, that proved that all the years before, whatever it was, this was all the real chayes, the real life. And even though he had tzores, but that was the real life because he still stuck to the Eibishter with all the tzores. But now you see that this is what it is. And meet this movement with the Seder is that ungerufen by Chi. This explains why the Seder is called by Chi. He lived. Hagamas in hier retzich mit Norweg Meros Yankov some not only because even though that the Parshas doesn't only talk about things close to his death. Nor echt Tveres Yankov. Und wegen dem man noch dem. It talks about Yaakov's passing. And it talks about what happened after Yaakov. So how could the Seder called by Chi, as we said before, when the whole Parsha talks about his death? But not only that, it talks about not only close to his Tira, it talks about his Tira Mamish and what happened after his Tira. Now we understand why. The Gemara says that Yaakov Avinu Leimes. Yaakov Avinu didn't die. Just like if his children are alive, then he is alive. The Pashtek and Vayankim the Loshe Misa. That's why he doesn't say Vayankim, the word Misa, he died, the word Misa. But the Pirish, the Fun is, the meaning of this is, when we say that he's really didn't die, he's still alive, that Emes Achayim for Yaakov Ashtek and then Vazara B'Chayim. It shows what's the real life of Yaakov? The fact that his children are alive. That's what the Gemara means. Lay mes because Zari B'Chayim. Das heißt, this is what it means. Yes, as that Emes Rini B'Chayim. Das is since we said before, what's the real life? Something that's eternal, something that's forever. Just like by the Eibishter, which is the Moker Chaim, which is the sort of life Eden and David Eden are connected. So we said before that the real meaning of life is the eternity of the life. When do you see the real life of Yaakov? And what life? What do you mean? The life of eternity. We see the eternity of it. Not only, like he said before, that the last minute when he passes away, that moment, and everything was good till the end, you know that this is nothing's changing. It never goes further. It's not only at the moment when he passes away, even what happens after he passes away, after the neshama leaves the goof. Then it shows that not only does the true life, which is the eternity in connection to Hashem, is there in the neshama, that even after he passed away in Gashmias, in this world, is the life of Yaakov still. In seine Kinder, it's in his children. As they left the members of Chaim from Yaakov Avinu, they lived the true life of Yaakov. So the Vayechi goes on the whole Seder because even the time when he passed away, that's part of Vayechi. And even what happened after he passed away is still part of the time Vayechi, because we just came to the conclusion that Vayechi doesn't mean physical life. Vayechi means a life of Nitzchis. With them is noch Geschmack the time, but the Seder is only with Vayechi. Now it's even more Geschmack why the Seder is called Vayechi. The meat is nicht bloß mutig, als ich lache, Ptiris Yankiv is noch als Shaykh zu sagen Vayechi Yankiv. Doesn't mean only that even after he passed away, you still could call it Vayechi. That's how we normally would learn. Since he's a tzaddik and after he passed away, it continued. So even after he passed away, you could still call it Vayechi. The Rebbe says more. Dafke specifically, especially after he passed away, is Eshkenting the Emes Nitzchis Vayechi Yaakov. That's when we know Vayechi Yaakov. So when is the Vayechi Yaakov come to a revelation to see it? After he passed away. So obviously the Vayechi Yaakov is no contradiction to his passing, which was the main kash, one of the main kashas in the Sicha, because the Ruchnis thing that happens after his Ptira. Then the Rebbe continues. But früher gerät als mit Zadem, the Stimmung der Parshas ist verbunden nicht nur mit der Werte Vayechi Yaakov, nur mit der Ascholas HaSedre. Said before that the Stimmung der Parsha, the fact that the Parsha is stuffed up, is closed up, has to do not with the words Dafke Vayechi Yaakov, but with the beginning of the Sedre. Was here taken is Ptiras Yaakov. And the Nyonim was einem B'shaychas of them means it's connected to the whole Sedre, which talks about the death, the passing of Yaakov, and all the things in connection. Is Rasha Mashma in the dritten time for Medrash. Rasha skips the third reason of the Medrash. It's also called Tzorah Shebelum, that all the Tzorah stopped from him. And bring blake the tzvei timing only brings the other two reasons. Shenifter Yaakov when he passed away. That's when the Shivut started. The one who listened and he wanted to tell them the Ketz and it's got stuffed up. That so the Rebbe says that's what he said before. And the Rebbe is repeating. I said before that because the stima between the two Seder has to do with the Vayechi Yaakov, with the whole Seder of Vayechi Yaakov, and the Seder talks about the Ptira. That's why the first two reasons are there because they have to do with the Ptira of Yaakov. The third reason, which is that all the Tzoras went away from him, that's not part, has to do with the Ptira. Well, that's what he said before. But that pianal is eich masim bipnimis. On the base, the whole thing that we said till now, this pshat that we never said before, of pshuta shemikra, I think simple pshat. Simple pshat that Rebbe said that we understand that the stime here must have to do with the sedre, not with the words. That's pshuta shemikra, and therefore the third pshat doesn't fit to the whole parsha, which the whole sedre, which is about the ptira. Now the Rebbe says, I'll show based on what we said before that it also fits to what it says in Chassidus. But then was Dafke, they said it from Tiras Yankiv with the fact that we said now that Dafke, not only even after his Ptira, it's still called Vayechi. Dafke, his Ptira showed Vayechi, as we said before. That's the Pnimis, that fits the Pshat also. From Dafke durch Because dafke through die zwei Perushim, dafke through these two pshotim, wird herausgebracht und unterstrochen, brings out and stresses, der Amitis Achayim is nimshich geworden, bebonov. Dafke, these two things show that the word is real chayis even after he passed away in his children. Azay 11, Emes 11, Begolo is given, the linya from Kima Tere Mitzvah Zekis Novakus. These two Perushim show how the children, their main thing, their main life, the Gilui, is connected to Hashem. Because we said before, the Pnimis Inyan is here, that the real life is Chaim Nitzchim. And these two Perushim, the Rebbe will show, have to do with this Nakudah. That after he passed away, then you have the real Chaim. Why? Those was even learning Torah in the Chaim Mitzvahs, in the Akzaitvas, in the Token Shiva Golas. The fact that he didn't learn Torah, the Mitzvahs, there is no hardships of Golas. He says, "Mit kein Kreis Chidush." That's not such a special thing. Noch mehr, go further. I feel when even up Torah Mitzvahs in Golas, even when even the Torah Mitzvahs while they're in Golas. But the matzah from Golas is azaz, we feel the Gilui and catch the Gola. But the matzah of the Golas is, it's like in Golas, but you feel the cats, you feel the coming of the Geula, you feel the end. Basically, you know the Geula. Meveis ba'asoge dem cats. In Uis Golas. We know, at least in your mind, you know that there is a cats. And you know when the cats is. What's the cats? The cats means a time. Cats means the end. Uis Golas. When there is no more Golas. Dem Uis geleist werden on Arus Golas. The cats means they know that they will be redeemed and they will go out of Golas. So if you are in Golas, so first the Rebbe said if you're in Golas, you keep mitzvah. If you're not in Golas, keep mitzvah is not such a big thing. If you're in Golas, you keep mitzvah, but as long as you know the cats, it makes it much easier. It doesn't really show the real complete Vayechi that they lived in a form of nitzchias. Shas aber the Shibud and Tzoras HaGolas is as a grace. Aber Seich Lanush is that going to as a mikem from the Maris is geleist werden. But if the Golas is so strong that you don't even know how you're going to get out of it, you have no cats. That's Hitaichas Stimas cats. Hitaichas here, interesting word. If there would be the Gilead cats, it would give the Eden a certain push, give them a certain way of kayach, a special thing that they were able to do Torah mitzvahs. But when there's Stimas cats, you don't even have that. So you're in Golas and you have hardships and you don't see the cat. You don't, basically, you're in darkness, you don't see the light. Und doch, leit men, wenn man nicht leim, as the Gula wird kommen, and nevertheless, you believe with complete faith. The Gula will come. Every day you think you believe he's coming. When in the mates and you saw a Golas learn Torah, he's Mekayim mitzvahs, and while you have the power of Golas, you learn Torah and do mitzvahs. Don't wird often rate on plek as Torah mitzvahs of the Remes Achayis von Here is revealed that Torah mitzvahs is the real Chayos von Eden. The mail is verstandig. That we understand. As dafke durch dem drückt sich aus der Remes Achayis von Yaakov. We said before that the real Chayis of Yaakov is this, the Ruchnisike Chayis Mitzri. So when do we see it? When after him it goes to his children. And in the children Gufa, if they keep Torah mitzvahs in time of Golas, and a time when there is no cats, in other words, they don't see the cats, they don't see the light. That expresses the true life of Yaakov. It's his life, not only the Yidden's life, it's his life. Through the children of Chaim, that's why Yaakov. So we see how the fact that Nistam HaKetz is part of the reason of Vayechi Yaakov. Because when is the real Vayechi Yaakov? When Nistam HaKetz, when the Ketz is not revealed. The mitzvah noch besser verstandig. This explains even more. Was Rasha bring blaze the Eshet zwei Timing when Nidam Tam from Shabbos to Menach Schapiro. This gives a different, better shot. Why Rasha brings only the two shot, not the third one that all the tzoras were taken away from him. For the Kiyam HaTorah mitzvahs is man from Sos and Kol HaTzoras. The fact that he didn't do Torah mitzvahs. When there is no tzoras, he's noch nicht keraya. He's noch keraya nicht, ados is a chayes v'lishin. That doesn't show that it's a life without a change. Because of other, there's no tzoras, so you do Torah mitzvahs. When do you see the real Aveda? If there is Shibud and there is Tzoras Hashibud, and you don't see the light, you don't know the cats, and nevertheless you do Torah mitzvahs. And then when der Vayechi von Torah mitzvahs tut sich eich auf, is man from Golos Hashibud, if the Inyan Torah mitzvahs, which is the Vayechi, is accomplished in a time when there is Golos and Shibud, that brings out what is the purpose of the whole shibud, of the whole golas. As dafke durch dem kommt man zu the Geluim von der Gula betachas hashlemus. This brings you to the Gula. The Gula is going to bring you to the revelation of the Chaim of the Dveikus of the Eibishter. When do you show you the Dveikus of the Eibishter? When there's a Tzorah, there's a Shibud, and there's no cats. You don't see the cats, and nevertheless you take mitzvahs. So what happens if that brings out the true Chayas that you have, Chayas Nitzchi, which is Dover to the Eibishter? That brings the real Gula when this will be Nizgala, when this will be revealed. This explains also the deeper reason why Take, the cats was closed up for him. The Eibishter made it so that he shouldn't tell him the cats. Why? Vol the cats Nizgala geworden, had the cats been revealed, well, devil gefelt in the minion from take of our golos. The golos wouldn't be so bad. As long as they knew the cats, we said before, that makes it lighter, even though the golos is bad. But if you notice, you see the light ahead, it makes it easier. And if it makes it easier, the golos is not so strong. Since the shlemus, what's the purpose of the golos? To come to the gula. And when do you really have the real gula? When the golos is very strong and nevertheless you do it. So had the Kezbin is Gala, the Golos wouldn't be so strong. If the Golos is not so strong, then the Gula will not be really so strong. It wouldn't really reveal the real Chayas. So that's what the Eibusher made. There should be Nistam HaKetz. But maybe now there's Nistam HaKetz. Now the Golos is strong. And now this will show the real Chayas of the Chayas of Yaakov. This also explains the Lashon of Rasha. He wanted to reveal the cats and to his children, and Nistam HaKetz got stuffed up, taken away from him. So Rasha kommt doch mal weisen den Town von dem was Parshas is stumme. Rasha is coming to answer why this Parsha is stumme, is closed up. But genug, soll sagen, Nistam HaKetz. To answer that question, why there's no space in between, why it's stumme, Rasha could have answered with 2 words, 3 words. Why? Nistam HaKetz. The cats was taken away from him. Was it on the gate to the sale as bikish legalis cats? He wanted to tell the cats, and the Eibishter made shouldn't do it. What's the gate that he wanted? To answer the kasha, why there's a steam, that would be enough with these words. But now we understand that the in them is maruma is a hint. As Adarabe, contrary, dafke durch nistam men hat sich ausgeführt in einem kasha legalis sakets lebonov. Made it the gipshat that Yaakov wanted to tell the cats, which means reveal the cats. When is the real revelation of the cats? When they don't know the cats. If they don't know the cats, the Golos is harder, and they would nevertheless work, then this brings the real cats. The stima cats is not can helem to live helem chas v'shalom. The fact that the cats is forgotten is not just because Leibel wanted to cover it up, he should know it. No, the tachlis is they as durch here, so später arus kommen der Gilei cats genau. The Gilei cats means the revelation of what the cats is really. So when Yaakov wanted them gal the cats, it happened through stima cats. The gal the cat doesn't only mean to tell him. What means he wanted to tell him when the Mashiach will come. It's not that. It means he wanted the Megala, the Indian of the cats, bring the cats. The only way could he bring the real cats, which is the real Nitzchi, is dafken when you do not know when the cats is, so you don't see the light, and nevertheless you do it. This was what it means. He wanted to reveal the cats from his children, and it got stuffed up from him. When he wanted to reveal the Gula to them, so his children should have the Geula complete. He's given stimus cats. That's why it had to be covered up. This is given the achone. This was the preparation. And the noch sollen say mekabel sein. Das was big Yaakov Megalis, that they should be able to be Megalit. This gave the care that the Gula should be harder, but the Gula will be a greater one. So the Gilui HaKetz will be a stronger madrege. So the Yidden will be able to be Mekabel the Giluyim from the Gula Asita, the Giluyim from future Gula.